learners, welcome to Chapter 6, Lesson 3, Day 1. We're going to complete the square today. And that's actually all we're going to do. We're not going to solve our quadratic equations using this method yet. We're just going to learn what completing the square means today. Okay? Now, again, we know already that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 is standard form of a quadratic equation. Okay, where there has to be an a present. It might just be 1, but still there has to be 1 there for this to have an x squared involved, for this to be a quadratic equation. So that's the caveat I have to start with for every single one of these, right? Now, when you have a perfect square trinomial, what you have is a trinomial that when factored will result in exactly the same binomial times itself, which of course can be written as 1 binomial squared. Okay, so let me give you some examples of perfect square trinomials. X squared minus 6x plus 9. Because when factored, the factors of 9 that add up to -6 are -3 and -3. So I could write this as x minus 3 squared, because it's a number times itself. X squared plus 16x plus 64 is a perfect square trinomial because 64, let's see, the factors of 64 that will add to give me 16 are positive 8 and positive 8. So x plus 8 times x plus 8 is the factored version, which means that I could write this as 1 binomial squared. Technically, same with this, although we're not going to use having a number in front of x squared. And I will show you that this is a perfect square trinomial because the factors of 25 cross multiplied with the factors of 9 that will add to give me 30 in the middle are 3x plus 5, 3x plus 5, which means that you can write that as 3x plus 5 squared. Okay. We're going to spend our time today creating perfect square trinomials ourselves. Now, before we create them ourselves, let's just kind of look at some perfect square trinomials that I'm telling you are, and we're going to factor them into 2 binomials and then write that as 1 binomial squared. What are the factors of 1 that will add to give me 2? Well, the only factor of 1 is 1. So x plus 1 times x plus 1 is the factored version, which means that you can write it as x plus 1 squared. Awesome. What are the factors of 81 that will add to give me -18? That would be x minus 9 and x minus 9, which means that you can write it as just x minus 9 squared. I'm going to hold off on this one for a second and instead go down here to what are the factors of 16 that can add to give me a -8 in the middle? Well, that would be x minus 4 times x minus 4, which means you can write it as x minus 4 squared. So this guy, it's cross multiplying, but if I tell you already that it's a perfect square, then we know, well, the square root of 4 is 2 and the square root of 9 is 3. So we know that those have to be our numbers, right? So it's 2x plus 3 and 2x plus 3. And let me just do a quick 2x times 3. So if I'm cross multiplying this way, right? I get 6x, and then I get that again. And what's 6x plus 6x? 12x for your middle. So that's how I know that this one works and is a perfect square trinomial also. When we go to create perfect square trinomials today, we are not going to have a number in front of our x squared. So that is something we are not going to deal with, even though you can have a perfect square trinomial that has a number in front of the x squared. That's not something we're going to create ourselves. So just so you have a heads up. Doesn't mean that this particular thing wasn't a perfect square trinomial. That's all I'm kind of showing you there. Was there a pattern? Like with that middle, that number in front of x here, was there some sort of pattern in those? And yeah, actually there was. And that's what we're going to use today. There was a pattern there with those. When completing the square, what we're going to do is we're going to take the b term and divide it by 2. Let's look. What's 2 divided by 2? And look what was in the binomials. What's negative 18 divided by 2? Negative 9. And look what was in the binomials. What's negative 8 divided by 2? Negative 4. And look what was in the binomials. That's how we're going to figure out what we call the C term when we create our own perfect square trinomial. When we create our own perfect square trinomial, we are already going to have the ax squared and the bx. We need to insert the correct C to make that trinomial, that whole thing together, a perfect square. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to use b divided by 2 squared to put that C term in for ourselves. You might remember that from Algebra 1. Let's do it. So we need one side, has all your x squared and your x terms. The x squared needs to be a single term, right? 1x squared, okay? And that's because I'm telling you so. So why? Whew, bless me. Thank you. Sneezing, by the way, not a symptom of COVID, just so you know. So those of you with allergies that have been all worried about that, don't. It's not a symptom of COVID. Coughing is, so don't cough. Anyway. If there is a number in front of your x squared, you have to divide everything by it. Everything. And that's going to be one of the things that we encounter. So I'll show you as we go. Okay? Then what you're going to do is take the middle number in front of the x and divide it by 2. And then you're going to square it and add it to the ends. Okay? That results in a perfect square trinomial that you have created. Okay? The next lesson is what are we going to do with it? But let's just create it first. All right? (16) divided by 2 is 8. 8 squared is 64. Done. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Done. I'm going to skip the odds. I'm going to go down to the evens. Negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. Negative 12 squared is 144. Done. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. Done. Has any of those that I've added so far, added at the end, been negative? No, because negative times negative is positive, and positive times positive is positive. So you're always going to add this number. It's always going to be added there. But with odds, you're going to be adding a fraction. Okay. This is how it will always go, so that will make it a little easier. Is it's always over 2, right? So this is negative 3 divided by 2, and then square the top and bottom. So it's always going to be adding the odd number squared over 4. Because what is 2 times 2 always going to end up being? So 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4. Add 9/4 to both sides, or in this case, that one spot. 5 over 2. Okay, 5 squared is 25. 2 times 2 is 4. When you have an odd b term, you're going to add a fraction, and it's going to be a fraction over 4. All you do is square the b term, put it over 4. That's what you put at the end. All right. I don't really need to talk about this until the next piece of the lesson, but I'm going to just because I think you can handle it. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. What's 2 squared? 4. Well, because there's two sides of an equal sign, now I can't just put that in my slot. I have to also add it to the other side. So it's going to be x squared plus 4x plus 4. This is your insert, equals 3 plus 4. That's your insert to make this a perfect square trinomial. Whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. Here, in this case, scooch that 6 over here and add your plus blank, right? So -4 divided by 2 is -2. -2 squared is 4 to both sides, right? That's what you'll be doing. So over here, you have the perfect square trinomial, right? Over here, -6 plus 4 is -2. So you've made the perfect square trinomial and you've added that regular term to both sides. That's going to be important in the next lesson. Okay, the addition property of equality tells me so. So scooch this 8 over first, scooch that over to the other side. So you've got these guys, and now you've got x squared minus 9x plus, oh, what's 9 squared? 81 over 4 gets added to both sides. That got added to both sides. Whatever you do over here to make the perfect square trinomial, you also add over here. And it's always adding, so that's one less thing you have to worry about. In this case, yeah, we'll have to change this into a fraction over 4, but gosh, it's not going to be that hard. You just multiply the top number by 4 to do it, right? I get -32 over 4. Those will add up. We'll do that in the next lesson, though. How's that sound? Yeah. So your homework is really just going to be figuring out the C term to create the perfect square trinomial. Okay? That's it. That's all you're going to do. So make sure that you are taking the B term and dividing it by 2 and squaring it. That's how you get this number right here. Take the B term, divide it by 2, and square it. Take the B term, divide it by 2, and square it. You can do this. Create those perfect square trinomials. And then once you are done with that, we will get on to day 2, and we'll actually solve quadratic equations using those perfect square trinomials. I'm sure you can see where this is going, but if not, hey, stay tuned. We got another lesson with it. All right, guys, have fun with those C terms. I'll see you soon. Bye.